with that, I would like to hand over for a very quick introduction to the EAC chair, if you're available online today, to say a few welcome remarks, and then we'll jump straight into the first presentation. Thank you. I will stop sharing. Have we got the EAC chair online today? Hello?
Good afternoon, everyone.
It might be better if you have your video off, because I think we're having some bandwidth troubles.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, we can hear you well.
Yeah, thank you. Mine will not be long. I'm called Teresfo Ngoga from the Rwanda Development Board, Tourism and Conservation Department. As I mentioned in the chat box, we have a heavy rain here in the I will not want to bother the meeting in opening my microphone, but this is to welcome you all to this third webinar on transfrontier conservation areas in East Africa. We have already had two sessions where we have got experience on TFCAs from the SADC, and this third will enrich us with experience from CMS and IUCN. I hope this will build our capacity in developing mechanisms to manage our transfrontier conservation areas in the East African region. It's on this note that I want to wish you all a fruitful webinar. My intervention will be limited, as I told you, with the rain here. It's a good luck, but not always wished for meetings. I thank you all. Have a fruitful webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. With that, we will hand over to our first presenters. I would like to introduce Tawanda and Lisa, who will be presenting the SADC TFCA portal and how it is being used. The floor is yours, Tawanda and Lisa.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I'm going to share my screen, but Tawanda will start with the presentation.
And I think just to save bandwidth, maybe quickly stick on your video, say hello so people can see your face, and then we'll keep the videos off for those that are having some bandwidth issues.
Yeah, okay, good afternoon. I think whilst Lisa is setting up the screen, I think it's a good opportunity for us to once again interact and share some ideas and some of the lessons that we learned from SADC with the implementation of the TFCA program. In particular, the some of the milestones that we achieved with the contribution of the TFCA network. So I'll just quickly do the introductory part, and the greater part of this is going to be done by my colleague, Lisa. And also to emphasize that this is a very fruitful partnership that we had with the program, with the GIZ, that we are working very closely. Can you go to the next slide, please, Lisa? So essentially, I think what we're trying to do is to set up, a network of transfrontier conservation areas in the region where resources are shared and sustainably co-managed, so that we foster socio-economic development and coming together of countries to share some good ideas and so forth. So our mission really is to develop SADC into a functional and integrated network of transfrontier conservation areas where shared natural resources are sustainably co-managed and conserved to foster socio-economic development, regional integration for the benefit of those living within and around TFCAs and mankind at large, which means even the visitors that come to the region. Next slide, please. So essentially, we are mostly guided by the 7 key components, looking at advocacy and harmonization, enhancement of financial mechanisms for TFCAs. For example, we are setting up a financing facility, and we also look at capacity building for stakeholders. I think TFCAs being a new concept within conservation, I think it's key that we work very closely with this component. But I think of importance is also, this information and knowledge management systems, that's component 4, enhancement of local livelihoods, participation and beneficiation of the local communities around the protected areas. Also reducing vulnerability of the effects of climate change, which is actually a global challenge at the moment. And I think as we move forward, I think it's one of our key areas of priority in terms of development of the TFCAs. But I think of importance as well is to harness the tourism products that are associated with the TFCAs. So our last component is actually looking at development of TFCAs into marketable regional tourism products. But for today, we are particularly going to share some of the basic information regarding data and knowledge management system, which is component 4. But I just want to end and part by just sharing or recap, this regional conservation approach, which is much covering a big landscape. As you can see, there's varied sizes, but most of these TFCAs actually cover more than one. Our biggest is on the central, that is the Kavako Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. It's well established. We also have Greater Limpopo. So with that, I would kindly hand over to my colleague, Lisa, to introduce herself and complete the rest of the presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much, Tawanda. That's really great. My name is Lisa Blanken. I'm working very closely with Tawanda, also based in Gaborone, working for GIZ, the German Development Agency. And I've been working with Tawanda as well on supporting the network in the last few years. And I would like to dive a bit more into detail with regard to an online portal that we've developed as part of the SADC TFCA network. But before I go into that, just very briefly, sort of showing where we're coming from. So as Tawanda explained, the program, the SADC TFCA program, was developed in 2013. And knowledge sharing, communication and exchange was really one of the key components to foster learning and to build a tighter network across the SADC region. So in the same year as the program was developed, also a network was established in a regional meeting attended by 9 SADC member states, specifically, as Tawanda mentioned, to component 4 on establishment of data and knowledge management systems. And as part of that, the program also highlights the need to establish a platform for knowledge management and information exchange, as well as monitoring and evaluation. But the key part of the portal and as well as the network is that knowledge management and information exchange platform. So the network currently has more than 600 members, but the purpose that they lined out in 2013 was that it should So it's through the network, TFCA challenges should be overcome through shared learning, knowledge management, and collaboration. The network was open to all stakeholder groups, and as you've seen, also some of the TFCAs are bordering the SADC region, also having partnership with member states outside of SADC. But it basically also includes NGO, donor, academia, NGOs, private sector. So there's a broad membership. And it's guided and led by a steering committee, which have also sort of helped in designing the portal a lot. So they're consistent of TFCA focal points from all SADC member states, as well as the SADC Secretariat as in their Secretariat role. And like with the East African community, the chairing is rotational as per a Troika system. So currently we have Mozambique as chair, and that is really the governing structure of the network. Realizing that TFCAs are complex systems that need also a variety of partners being part of that of the overarching goal and of the initiative. So the network looked at various components that they would like to work on: information exchange, joint learning and knowledge management, resource mobilization, and strengthening collaboration and relationships. But the joint learning and knowledge management there, in 2013, it was really laid down that there should be a platform being developed to enable that joint learning, also knowing that, of course, across the region, you can't always travel, and especially I think now with COVID, we've realized we can't always travel. So that to have an online platform to have that information readily accessible, and also developing a regional repository of TFCA related information. So in 2014, and also quietly soon after this portal was developed, and that's quite an interesting process because, of course, now we're in 2021, so a lot has changed since these 6 to 7 years since the portal was established. At that point, it was really seen that it should be a members-only portal. Also thinking that we might share information that we don't want everyone to read. So the GIZ at that point established a portal in close collaboration with the network and the steering committee. And later this was sort of expanded. So there were other partners, including IUCN Biopharma on their previous phase, as well as Peace Parks Foundation that had also online tools and information on TFCAs available. And there was actually a decision by the SADC Technical Committee meeting that these partners should collaborate more and having sort of an integrated system, which was then also decided to have a public website so that there's also a public entity where the general public or people that are new to TFCAs or would like to learn more about other TFCAs can actually also find sort of basic information on the TFCAs across the region. So that was then initiated and also later launched in 2016 during the CITES COP actually that took place in South Africa. At that point, GIZ and IUCN Biopharma also worked very closely together, particularly on this. Again, with all the partners and the network members. This project what I'm working on is basically ending or is about to end. Also the hosting has now been taken over by the Regional Center for Mapping and Resources for Development, RCMRD, which is a partner of IUCN Biopharma. But I'll come to some of the pros and cons of also a portal going forward. So this is how the portal looks, or the public entity of the portal, which now has also sort of an intranet. So this is the website where you can have various tools, or you can look at what jobs are there available, or if you want to read more about a TFCA, that's all found here. And then there's also a sort of the members only section. So there you would have to register to become a member. Also the network membership is actually reviewed by the steering committee. which I think is also something we're looking at, because it's quite how the network is growing. It of course also becomes something that you need to manage. But then here's basically the closed site, where then also more information is available, or also people from the network could post a news item which would then become become public on the website. So these systems are interlinked, and the closed environment is where most of the information is stored. So how is it used? I think it's very multifunctional. As you see, it's also two-system, but the main use is sort of to have it as a resource repository and a communication platform. Then I also have to say that since 2016, actually, there's also a separate initiative that came up, which is a WhatsApp group that just came into being by itself, and with I think the technology moving so fast currently, and people sometimes also getting a bit. They don't want to have too many separate systems that they would like to work on. Sometimes the WhatsApp group has been recently almost easier to really communicate, whereas of course the portal is our base. But for more direct communication, that has also been quite effective. Also, of course, knowing its limitations. So yeah, TFCA information, also the regional reference information system of BioPharma is linked to the portal. It has tourism-related information. You can link to the partners of the network. There's news published, as well as a legal atlas, which is actually a Peace-Parks Foundation system where many of the legal agreements are stored, and that's also again linked to the portal with the aim of trying to centralize the information that is available on TFCA onto one regional platform. Network membership. So we have, of course, the good advantage also of having such a portal is that, well, you can exchange with your network membership, but you also have actually a better overview of your network membership. So it has increased a lot. So on the portal is currently on around 450 members, and then there's additional membership through the WhatsApp group. Of course, some are dual members. They are in both of the systems. Interesting note, we have also now gone more online, which is a nice way to reach out to all your network members. So we had meetings also, but the portal has also been very effective in reaching out when there are webinars. And we had a webinar series, and you see that there was a huge increase of membership at that point. Then I'm coming to some of the lessons learned of this portal. I think it has been a really great journey for us as partners, but for SADC and for the member states and the stakeholders. If I can ask just everyone to turn off their microphone so that we don't hear any background noise. Thank you very much. Okay. So it's that for us, it's basically one platform to find SADC TFCA related information and tools. I've shown you how it also lists membership and tracks membership, and also opens it up to the world in a way. You also have a lot of memberships from academia outside of the SADC region, or NGOs that have a base, also a headquarters outside of SADC. And it's really a home. Like without the website, it would not have that home. Then some of the lessons learned. Of course, somebody has to create such a platform, and also it has to be sustained. So we are a program with a limited timeline, and luckily our CMRD has taken over. But it takes still a lot of time to populate it, and I think that's one of the critical parts here. Also going forward, but there is generally really a lot of interest. Also, the technology has changed a lot. We've been seeing that some other networks have, for example, used systems like D groups. That are also very effective, but they didn't exist at the time that we started this initiative. So of course, like I said, technology has changed a lot. and people are sometimes more inclined to use something that is easy and that is already on their phone, and they don't have to restart something new. The members only system is a very good system for tracking and for seeing who's member and not. But sometimes it also has disadvantages because it sometimes takes a while for people to be approved. People lose their login details even if it's easy to get it back. It's it can be a challenge or a hurdle for reconnecting basically. So that's also some of the items. And I'm going to throw a curveball in here because of course we have this very fruitful exchange now with the East African community. But there is already a platform or a knowledge exchange platform there. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the steering committee, or I'm speaking on behalf of myself. But there are, of course, also opportunities to see if there's an opportunity to share knowledge platforms in a way. Of course, realizing that the governance structures should definitely be separate because the steering committee is also very closely linked to the SADC structures. But for the purpose of knowledge sharing, I think there's also a lot of opportunities to work closely together. Because I think there's a lot to learn from South African side, but there's also a lot to learn from the East African side, and exchange I think would be very beneficial for both sub-regions. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Tawanda. So far, we haven't had any questions pop up in the chat. I was wondering, would anyone like to quickly put a few questions into the chat? We'll give it 1 second to make sure we're not missing any questions. And then we will quickly move on. We've got more people coming into the lobby. There we go. If everyone could please keep their video off. If you've just joined us, please put yourself on mute and turn your video off, please. Sorry, Flora, can you hear us?
Yes, how are you?
Hello, good, welcome. Please turn your video off. We've got some people with bandwidth issues, so we need to keep the videos off. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I see we don't have any burning questions for Tawanda and Lisa right now. So in the interest of time, we will move forward, but I will say to please consider what you've heard today. And if you do have burning questions, you can send an email to myself and I will connect you with the presenters.
All right, thank you.
If everyone could please turn their video off. Motumo, we can still see you. That would be helpful for those with low bandwidth. Hello, Motumo, can you hear us? If everyone can please turn their video off, that would be very helpful to the rest of us. Thank you. The video off button should be looking like a little video camera. You can have a slash through it. Right, we will move on to our next presentation. We were originally going to be hearing from Nora from the CMS on the CITES CMS African Carnivore Initiative, but unfortunately Nora is not with us today, and standing in is Clara. In the meantime, I will work on the video issues. Over to you, Clara. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sharing my screen, just a second. So, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect. We can see it. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I would like to build on our previous introduction of CMS and introduce you to two specific initiatives that are running under the CMS framework. And the one that I'm presenting now is the Joint CITES and CMS African Carnivores Initiative. This is a unique collaboration between two of the global conventions on species, namely CMS and CITES, and where each of the convention brings in its expertise and focus, and thereby making it hopefully something better than if each of them were working on their own. This initiative has also received the support of all of the range states of the 4 species that are being targeted by this initiative. And it has also received the blessing of both the CITES and the CMS Conference of the Parties. The initiative was developed because of the severe declines in all of the 4 species that are being targeted by this initiative, namely the cheetah, leopard, lion, and wild dog. Based on the IUCN Red List assessments, those 4 species declined substantially in their populations over the past 3 generations. And that caused the range states and the Conference of the Parties of CITES and CMS to think about something that would better conserve those species. We have grouped these species under this convention because all of them experience very similar threats, being the loss of habitat and fragmentation of habitat, but also human-wildlife conflict, and then the depletion of their prey base and unsustainable or illegal trade. The added value, or also the idea behind this initiative, is that by setting this up jointly, we could pool funds and expertise, but we could also use resources more equitably between the 4 species, because some of the species have historically received more attention and more resources than others. We also want to avoid the duplication of activities and costs, and better coordinate the support to range states. The objective of this initiative is to enhance the conservation, restoration, and management of the species, as well as their habitats and their prey. And this should be done by strengthening the coordination and the cooperation across the species ranges in Africa. And very importantly, we want to take into consideration also the needs and the livelihoods of local communities living with these 4 carnivore species. There is quite a history to the African Carnivores Initiative, and that started actually in 2015 when we organized a first joint CMS-CITES meeting on the African lion. This was at a time when there was a uplisting proposal for the lion submitted to CITES, and we also had a resolution under CMS that requested the Secretariat to look specifically into what the convention could do to conserve the lion better. This then evolved into a more coherent approach towards the species conservation, realizing that also the other leopard, cheetah, and wild dog needed more focus, and led then to the CMS COP12 in 2017 to request the Secretariat to establish a joint CITES and CMS African Carnivores Initiative. At the COP12 in Manila, the CMS COP also listed the lion and the leopard under the Appendix 2 of CMS. Then a first ACI range state meeting was organized in 2018 in Bonn, and it was attended by 31 of the range states, including CITES management authorities or scientific authorities and CMS national focal points. It was very helpfully supported by the IUCN cat specialist group, and the IUCN Save Our Species initiative provided also their insights on the IUCN African Wildlife Initiative, which is running a specific program for applicants to apply for funds to actually conserve also the same species that are being addressed here under the ACI initiative. And we had the support of a number of NGOs at this meeting. The meeting discussed very heavily the decisions that subsequently went into the CITES COP 17, I guess 18 it was, but also into the CMS COP 13, and issued a communique in which it laid out the vision of the range states for this initiative. Then at CITES COP 18, the parties adopted a decision on the joint CITES CMS African Carnivores initiative and requested the CITES Secretariat to develop a program of work for the initiative in cooperation with the CMS Secretariat and IUCN. And at CMS COP 13 in just last year in February, a resolution on the African Carnivores initiative was submitted and adopted, and also backed up by a set of decisions on the Carnivores initiative, also requesting the CMS Secretariat to develop a program of work. The resolution on the Carnivores initiative also sets out sort of a long-term vision for the initiative and settles it more firmly within the CMS context. The modus operandi of the initiative is that as a next step, the program of work, which has been developed by the secretariats together with IUCN CAT and CANET specialist group, is now being actually consulted by the range states and will then have to be submitted to the CITES and the CMS standing committees for approval. And then the Carnivores initiative also foresees regular range state meetings in which the range states can come together to monitor the implementation of the program of work, but also to exchange information on scientific research, but also on best practices to conserve the species. Then adjust and revise the program of work, which has been set up for a duration of 6 years, and to prioritize conservation activities. Now, the way forward to make this a meaningful contribution is that the program of work is organized in some overarching objectives and some outcomes, and then lists quite detailed activities under each of these outcomes. And we are then helping again to work with the IUCN SOS initiative to ensure that we have sustainable funding to actually implement this program of work, and hope that the implementation of this program of work can be done by the range states, but also by any other NGOs and institutions working on the conservation of these 4 species. As I already said, the program of work is currently under review by the range states, and by next week, actually, we hope that we have received feedback on this draft to then complement it and submit the draft to the CMS and IUCN standing committees for approval. Then yeah, I also already mentioned that through these regular range state meetings, we are hoping to set up some science policy platform to make sure that we can always inject the most recent research on the conservation of these species into the program of work, but also really establish ties and partnerships with those who are then implementing the program of work on the ground. So that's just a quick introduction to the ACI. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions or comments, I look forward to receiving them.
Hi. So it's Christine here. I see there's one question already in the chat that I'll just pose directly to you, Clara, and that's about what contribution the range states can make in terms of operationalizing the program. If you have any thoughts on that. Thank you, Justine, for that question.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I mean, to operationalize the program of work, first of all, of course, we welcome very much the comments on the draft program of work. And if there's anyone who has not been included in sending out this draft, I'm also willing to send it to you just after this session. It has been sent to the CITES management and scientific authorities and to the CMS national focal points, but it may not have been distributed more broadly to other interested or other experts working on this issue. So I'm happy also to share that with you. And then, of course, we welcome the support of the range states at the standing committee meetings of CITES and CMS in actually approving this program of work. And then later on, once it is approved, we very much hope that this being picked by the range states and used to plan their level.
Great, thank you, Flora. Sorry, just a reminder, please, to everybody to please close your mics if you and if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat. I have a question in the meantime, Clara, which is perhaps also just interesting for the community we're speaking to here, is what do you see potentially as the opportunities of sort of, I guess, collaboration between the TFCA network and the working group in EAC and SADC respectively with the African Carnivore Initiative?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think given that there is obviously these carnivore species are also flagship species for all of the countries, and we hope that this program of work can also serve as a anchor really for attracting funds for TFCA management, then to address the conservation of these species, as well as habitat and prey, habitat conservation and prey depletion that will benefit the entire TFCA. So I think that is quite relevant, and obviously the populations of these species are also transboundary. So they will move beyond the national boundaries of each of the range states, and are therefore need to be considered also in TFCA work.
Great, thank you, Clara. I see there's one more question here from Holly, and then I think I'll close the questions for now and move on. The question is around the linkages with other important players in this realm. So examples, Panthera, Zambia Carnivore Program, Lion Recovery Fund, Lion Guardian, CCF, EWASO, and there's a whole list here that Holly's put down. And the question is, are they expected to be working through IUCN's specialist groups or linked directly to the ACI? What is the sort of collaboration type of model with a lot of these players that have been on the ground and working there for many years? Yeah,
that's an excellent question. Thanks, Holly. very much hope that, well, at the range state meetings, the idea is to then also focus discussions on specific priority issues. And for these discussions, we hope that we can also then invite relevant experts to that, so that they already participate in the policy discussions on that. But then also hope that for the implementation of the program of work on the ground, we can form partnerships with as many as possible of these organizations to help and support the range states then in implementing the work. The door is definitely wide open.
Great, thank you, Clara. And thanks everyone for the questions. Thank you for sharing that information with us. I think it is very relevant for the TFCA community that's with us today. So great to hear more about that. I'm going to pass on now to Kevan Zunckel to continue with the next presentation on the diagnostic tool for transboundary conservation planners. So Kevan, if you are able to share your screen, please go ahead, or otherwise I'm sure Andrea can help with that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christine. Yeah, it seems that I have very, very limited functionality on this side. So Andrea, if you can share the presentation, and I'll call it up on my side, so hopefully we can synchronize. Is that okay, Andrea? Christine, Andrea, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm just opening it up on my side. Apologies.
Okay. Okay.
One moment.
There's nothing complicated in the presentation. It's just a script. You can just run through it as I talk to it, Andrea.
Great. Let's see. Should be coming up shortly. There you go. Can you see it?
I can't see anything on my side. There's absolutely nothing. There's no one's videos, anything. I've just left my video off, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
I suspect it might be a bandwidth issue.
Clara, Christine, can you see the presentation up?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. All right, we have your first slide up. Kevan, go ahead. And actually, just before you start, apologies to those that asked questions for the first presentation. I can't see the chat, so we'll work on solving that for this one. Thank you. Over to you, Kevan.
Good. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, you can, that's just the title slide. You can go on to the next one. Okay, so we'll jump straight into it. And so if the folk could just mute their mics, please.
One moment, I can mute everyone. If everyone could please turn off their video and mute themselves, that would be helpful. Please check that your video is off and you are muted.
Ah, that sounds better. Good. So the diagnostic tool for transboundary conservation planners was developed initially by Maja Vasilijevich in collaboration with Boris Erg, and that was published in an IUCN publication in 2012, initiating effective transboundary conservation, a practitioner's guideline based on the experience of the Dinaric arc. So that's a European perspective. But Maya's and Boris's goal with the diagnostic tool was to develop a generic tool that could be applied anywhere in the world. Subsequently, the tool was integrated into the SADC TFCA guidelines, which I put together in close collaboration with the network in 2014, and then also into the IUCN, World Commission on Protected Area Transboundary Conservation Guidelines, of which Maya was the key author, and I also played a role in that and that was published in 2015. So the tool's been fairly well published up until now. And soon after it was first published in 2012, Maya produced an electronic version in MS Excel format, which allows for automated scoring and the development of a report. The latest version of the tool, completed late last year, reflects up-to-date understanding of transboundary conservation.
Apologies, Kevin, apparently we're having some trouble with people seeing the video, seeing the presentation. Give me 1 second. Yes. And I'll try to solve it.
All right, should I pause until you've done that?
Pause 1 moment.
Sure.
Can everyone please check that they are not on video? Motuma, if you can hear us, please turn your video off. Matuma, can you hear us? Please turn your video off. Right, I will try sharing one more time. And we'll start from scratch and see if that works. Ding. All right, I am now on the second slide, diagnostic tools for TBC planners. Over to you, Kevin, again.
Thanks very much. Can you scroll down to the 4th slide?
On to the 4th slide, soon after it was published.
That's correct, yes. And another click, version 2 of the tool?
Yes.
Okay, so version 2 of the tool was completed last year, and it now reflects a greater understanding, updated understanding of transboundary conservation processes, as well as valuable feedback from practitioners who have applied the tool in various areas around the world. So since 2012, there's a bunch of folk who have used it, and they fed back to Maya to give some constructive criticism and feedback. And the next point there, please, Andrea.
Yes.
So the updated version, this version 2, was again prepared by Maya in collaboration with Boris, and I played a reviewer's role. Next slide. Then I think many of us who are involved in transboundary conservation will know that developing and implementing transboundary conservation initiatives are complex and very time-consuming. Careful planning prior to taking action can significantly help to generate success and effectiveness and reduce potential risks. We all know that transboundary conservation is a very appealing approach to addressing conservation issues, and we want to jump in and often do so without careful consideration of these complexities. Next point. So the diagnostic tool for transboundary conservation planners offers a rapid assessment. Having said that, rapid, it's a relatively rapid assessment, and it can be applied very slowly and methodically, or alternatively, it can be quite a rapid assessment. I'll touch on that in a moment. And it assesses the feasibility for transboundary conservation in any region of the world. It's considered an important asset in helping transboundary conservation proponents diagnose the complex situation by carefully checking preconditions and designing the transboundary conservation processes by developing efficient strategies. Next slide. So putting that within sort of strategic talk, the aim of the diagnostic tool is to support the decision-making process leading to the institutionalization of transboundary conservation. And breaking that up then into 5 objectives, the first objective being to enable transboundary conservation planners and facilitators to assess and evaluate feasibility for efficient design and implementation of transboundary conservation initiatives. Once again, just emphasizing that need to sort of step back from this great idea of a transboundary conservation initiative and objectively and coldly assess the feasibility. Second point then, or the second objective, is to enable the improvement of ongoing transboundary conservation initiatives by providing an update on the status of issues critical for efficient functioning of the transboundary conservation processes. So this really is within the spirit of active adaptive management and the iterative approach that needs to be taken to any conservation initiative. Then the third objective is to strengthen the capacity of stakeholders in potential or ongoing transboundary conservation initiatives on issues that are critical for its establishment and implementation. So once again, and it'll be emphasized in the fourth objective, if you can go there, please, Andrea, and to the next slide, is to then offer the possibility of an interactive participatory approach at transboundary or at national levels in assessing the feasibility for transboundary conservation through completing the diagnostic tool at specifically and carefully facilitated organized workshops. So that really is an opportunity to strengthen, when we say strengthen capacity of stakeholders, that's really said broadly in many senses, helping them understand what opportunities are present within a transboundary conservation initiative, how they can get involved, how they could potentially benefit by it, how they could be affected by it, etc. And then the fifth objective then is to enable rapid self-assessment of the feasibility for transboundary conservation. Moving on, then the target audience. The diagnostic tool is targeted at individuals and institutions intending to plan, initiate, design, facilitate, and or support the transboundary conservation process, as well as those who might be affected by the process. So there again, referring to stakeholders, affected communities, etc. Next slide, please. So the structure of the diagnostic tool, as I've said, it's now in an electronic format in MS Excel spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet has 5 tabs. The first tab provides introductory information and instructions how to go about completing and using the diagnostic tool. The second tab is a glossary and a list of references, which are associated directly to the tool itself and important links to background information, supporting information for the transboundary conservation process. The third tab really is the bulk of the tool, and this is the questionnaire, and it has 100 questions that follow the following themes. There are 4 themes that the questions cover. The first one is really testing whether or not there is a compelling ecological reason or reasons for the transboundary initiative. Secondly, it then tests what the benefits would be of putting a transboundary initiative together, and if and what the challenges would be beyond the ecological reasoning. Thirdly, it then looks at the stakeholder basis. Who are the stakeholders and what are their influences, etc. And then lastly, it tests the capacity to work across international boundaries. What capacity exists within those stakeholders to take this transboundary conservation initiative forward? The fourth tab is an automatically generated report. So as you compile, as you work through the questions, which have both qualitative and quantitative aspects. So you in some instances you ask to score, and there's a little drop-down menu that prompts you in terms of what scores to put in, and then also you prompted to insert information. And those scores and that information then goes across from the questionnaire into this automatically generated report. And then lastly, the fifth tab is an annex that provides some additional background information on the generically what the benefits could be and what the challenges could be for a transboundary conservation initiative. And once again, these are generic, and there obviously will be unique circumstances depending on where it's being applied. Next slide, please, Andrea. Then there are essentially three approaches to using the diagnostic tool. And firstly, and it's the one that we would really recommend, it's the most time consuming, the most costly, but I think the benefits of applying it in this way are huge. And that would be to conduct as a transboundary participatory workshop, gathering as many key stakeholders as possible from all of the concerned countries. Secondly, and an alternative to this, if it's not possible to go for Plan A, Plan B would then be to implement the tool at a national level, holding national workshops, and then try and collate the outcomes that have come from those national workshops. And lastly, one could, if you find yourself as an individual proponent who believes that there's an opportunity for a transboundary initiative, is to use the tool on your own as a self-assessment, and to give yourself a sense of whether or not it's worthwhile continuing with the process and investing more in taking it forward. The next slide then speaks to how one goes about completing the questionnaire. And it's very simple. As I said, the third tab on the question on the tool is the questionnaire, and simply to work systematically through that from question 1 through to 100, ensuring that all participants understand what has been asked and facilitate discussion, hopefully to the point of consensus. Now, this really is, I think, where the strength of the tool comes in, because when one brings in a multi-stakeholder grouping, people come in with different ideas, different perspectives, different ways of seeing things. And by running through this questionnaire, we're forced to listen to other perspectives. We're forced to try and understand, for example, dealing with any one of the questions that has a score from 1 to 5, you could get one participant putting forward a score of 1 and another participant putting forward a score of 5, and they might have very good reasons for why they're doing that. And it's important that the process is facilitated in a way that everyone has an opportunity to put those perspectives on the table, to understand where everyone is coming from, and then try and work towards a common understanding of what the answer should be to that particular question. So not only do you come out with a generated report at the end of this process, but you come out of this by having a pool of stakeholders who have gone through a very rigorous systematic process and have enhanced their understanding hugely of what this transboundary conservation initiative entails. Thirdly, answer each question by providing exactly what is required. So a particular question could have both a quantitative and a qualitative aspect to it, or one or the other. There's a drop-down menu, as I said earlier, that guides you in indicating the appropriate score, and then also where information is required. And because it's in Excel, if the space provided is not sufficient, you just simply increase the row width to reveal all the information that has been provided. Then sort of iterating, the structure of the tool, what the outcomes of the process would be, as I've said, as a report covering the following aspects that are relevant to the feasibility of transboundary of a transboundary conservation initiative, speaking to the ecological reasons behind the idea of a transboundary conservation initiative, and testing whether those reasons are compelling. Secondly, highlighting what those benefits would be, as well as the challenges that go beyond the ecological reasoning. Thirdly, who the stakeholders are. And fourthly, what is the capacity of all of the stakeholders to work across the international boundaries. So thanks very much then for the opportunity of presenting on the diagnostic tool for transboundary conservation planners. And as you can see in that last slide, there's a link, www.tbpa.net. That is the website for the Transboundary Conservation Specialist Group of the IUCN WCPA. So I'd urge you to go to that link, go to the tools, and you will find the diagnostic tool on that website. Play with it, look at it, use it. Irrespective of where you are within your transboundary conservation process, we believe that it can add value. So thanks, Andrea. I think that's me done.
Great, thank you very much, Kevin. I'm going to take over the question and answer session from Andrea, just because she was presenting and couldn't see the chat. So there's a question here from Simon for you, Kevin, about how widely the tool has been applied so far around the world.
Thanks for that, Simon. Yeah, it has been applied quite widely. It's been applied in Asia, in Europe, in the States, in Northeast Africa. I was involved in a process to establish a transboundary initiative between Djibouti and Ethiopia, where we used the tool in a multi-stakeholder forum. It was a great experience. So yes, it's had fairly wide application. There is a webinar being organized on the IUCN Vital Sites forum platform for the 19th of February, where we're going to be showcasing the tool, and there will be presentations from Europe, from the States, and from Africa, where people will be speaking about how they've applied the tool and what the experiences have been. So that's 19th of February. Look out for that, please.
Yes, thanks for that, Kevin. I actually just saw the invitation to that earlier today. And yes, I would just encourage everybody to look for that website too. I can try and post the link perhaps just now after we finish this question and answer. Justine is also asking, in terms of where it has been applied, what were some of the challenges perhaps that they've come across in the application of this tool? Was there anything that comes to mind that maybe also informed the sort of the questionnaire the way it is now?
Not hugely. I think that the questionnaire has been refined and fine-tuned. So it's not as if it's evolved from one format into one that is now very, very different. So I think that the fine-tuning has been great. But the challenges really come down, particularly again when you've got a multi-stakeholder grouping and possibly different languages and so on. It would be like facilitating any multi-stakeholder processes, trying to make sure that people understand what is being asked. So yeah, that would certainly be a challenge, to have someone facilitating the process who is fully conversant in the tool, who understands the tool, understands the questions and what has been asked by those questions, and who has the ability to be able to bring that multi-stakeholder grouping together to have a shared understanding of every one of those 100 questions. And then at the same time, once there's that shared understanding for the question, is then to facilitate the process of trying to reach consensus on what the answer is. So that I would believe is the greatest challenge. But I think from a conservation planning perspective, whether it's at the transboundary level or at the national level, we mustn't balk away from those challenges. We need to embrace those challenges, because it's that tunnel vision that many of us have that gets in the way of taking these multi-stakeholder processes forward.
Great, thank you, Kevan, for that. Maybe just to add on, also from Justine, is she was also asking specifically about the scoring, that in many cases that can be subjective, and if there's how you've tried to sort of overcome this more sort of subjective approach.
Yes, I think if you're sitting there doing it as a self-assessment, most definitely your objectivity will be challenged. But the more people involved, I think the more objective the score is going to be, because you're going to be holding each other accountable. You know, where you have people with completely divergent opinions, very important to listen to those opinions. So you'll get the subjectivity coming out initially, and then with really good facilitation, you can work with that to eventually come up with a score and information which is shared and understood and is inserted into the tool with, you know, everybody's blessing. So if you are able to get to that point, then I guess you can feel quite confident that what's coming out of this is going to be quite objective.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I think that just underlines again the need for good facilitation of the process. Last quick question, and literally a half a minute answer, if I may. Chris is asking if it's been applied in Uganda at all, and if there is any plan to do so that you know of.
I'm not aware if it has been applied, and I'm not aware if there are any plans. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay. Yes, thank you. That's great. I think, I mean, ultimately what Kevan was saying also, I mean, this tool is available for download, and then there are people obviously within Kevan's group that's also been working on this that can probably point you in the direction of good facilitators that might help you. So I think the idea is that anybody can initiate this. It's not necessarily the Transboundary Protected Areas group that will be initiating it, but they're available as a resource to support the process. Okay, so then I'm sorry, Kevan, to cut you off.
Thank you for that, Christine. Absolutely. You know, it's out there. It's published. It's available. Take it and use it. And if you want support, just let us know, and we will provide as much support as we can.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevan, for that overview. I am going to hand back over to Clara for the next presentation from her. So over to you, Clara.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christine. I'm just sharing the presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So, yes, now I would like to just present the CMS concerted action for the conservation of the giraffe. And since this is not such an iconic species, unfortunately, like the African carnivores, I'll also give you a very quick intro to the conservation status and main threats to the species. So since we base also the listing of species under CMS on the IUCN red list assessments, this is always very important to us. And yes, you may know that the giraffe populations have declined by 43% over the past 3 decades, and therefore the status on the IUCN red list assessment is now vulnerable. And you may also know that giraffes occur in very different habitats, ranging from close to desert to also woodland savanna. And currently there are now around 110,000 individuals left across Africa, so not very many. In terms of historical and recent known distribution, you can see on the left map, in light pinkish, the historic distribution, and then in gray, the current distribution. You can see that it has shrunk immensely. And on the and now the giraffe occurs in 21 countries across Africa, and the populations are non-continuous and quite fragmented, just as the habitat is also fragmented. On the right map, you can see where there are transboundary populations, and apart from the few Western African populations, which are quite isolated and small, the main occurrence of the giraffe is now in Eastern and Southern Africa, and there are a number of countries that share transboundary populations, just like Ethiopia and Somalia, but also Ethiopia and Kenya, Somalia, and then quite importantly, Kenya and Tanzania. And of course, in the Kasa area, there is quite a few transboundary populations. Then what is actually triggering the movement or the migration of giraffes? Well, this is habitat availability, but also the search for forage and search for mates or to minimize conflict in terms of the male population. So there's quite some transboundary movement across relatively large distances. The main threats to giraffes are habitat loss and fragmentation because of human encroachment, land degradation, and the construction of power lines, oil pipes, but also railways and roads, of course. And then hunting and illegal trade has become quite a big threat now. And of course, disease and climate change and the lack of awareness of different stakeholders. The conservation of giraffe under CMS started basically with the listing of giraffe by IUCN as vulnerable in 2016. This is when the issue came sort of on the horizon and came to the attention of CMS parties. And in 2017 at CMS COP12, the government of Angola submitted a proposal for the inclusion of giraffes on CMS Appendix 2. And this proposal was subsequently adopted by the COP. What does it actually mean for a species to be listed on CMS Appendix 2? Well, this means that the range states that are also parties to the convention should come together and collaborate in the conservation of the species. And they are then encouraged to come up with the most needed conservation measures and agree those between them. There are different tools that CMS has that facilitate this collaboration, and these range from legally binding agreements to not binding memoranda of understanding, developing action plans, or as was decided by the range states in this case, concerted actions. And again, such a concerted action can also take different forms. In the case of the giraffe, concerted action, the Secretariat facilitated an expert meeting, which took place in Namibia in July 2019, and which was attended by representatives from Cameroon, Chad, Ethiopia, Kenya, Niger, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, and of course also Namibia, even though Namibia hasn't joined CMS yet. And these experts were supported by the Giraffe Conservation Foundation and IUCN Giraffe experts in developing this concerted action. The concerted action was then also submitted by these countries to CMS COP13 in February last year and adopted by the CMS COP. And it entails a number of activities which seek to make the coordination and collaboration between range states across boundaries stronger, to facilitate information exchange, population monitoring. It aims at the establishment of an international online database to monitor species decline. It again also is keen on involving communities in conservation actions and has asked the Secretariat to also investigate the possibilities for establishing a conservation fund specifically for giraffe. The Giraffe Conservation Foundation has already prepared some translocation guidance, and we just recently shared that with all of our national focal points to provide their views and comments on this, and we very much look forward to receiving them. And the concerted action foresees a continent-wide meeting between all the range states to develop a continent-wide conservation strategy, but also to look into the feasibility of regional strategies and support range states in developing national strategies. So it's quite a comprehensive quite a heavy concerted action in comparison to some of the other concerted actions that have been adopted by CMS COP. The main challenge, I think, now and way forward for us is to actually raise funds to implement all these activities, but at the same time, of course, increase some awareness of the plight of the giraffe and support capacity building activities, research and collaboration on this. And so, yeah, just a quick introduction to that. Thank you very much. And again, if you have any questions or comments, I would be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Clara. Thanks again for another very good presentation. I see that Holly has posted a question. She's asking, how can governments be best informed as to what species or subspecies they have within their national territories and their numbers and distribution?
Okay, well, I think that would be a question that we would not directly answer, but we could receive such questions and put them forward to our partners in the IUCN expert group on giraffe. Okay, great. So I assume again what that means, that essentially it's the giraffe working group essentially that has the contacts on the ground that would be working also with the governments in the region? Again, we can facilitate communications through the Secretariat with the expert groups, and I know that obviously the expert group is also extremely active on the ground, carrying out a lot of very tangible conservation measures, and we work more at the policy level, but anything that involves policy, then we are very happy to respond to questions. Great. Okay, I don't see any other questions, and I think we are pretty much bang on time as well. So I am actually just going to close and not take any more questions anyway. And I'm going to hand over to Andrea. And thank you again very much, Clara, for the presentation, actually to all the presenters. Certainly from my side, I found it super interesting again, as usual.
And with that, I'm going to hand back over to Andrea. Thank you.